Welcome to the HRchat podcast, bringing the best of the HR and talent communities to you.
Welcome to another edition of HRchat, brought to you by the HR Gazette. I'm your host, Bill Banham, and today we're very lucky to be joined by Rob Catalano. Rob is a passionate marketer, speaker, entrepreneur, and influencer in the HR tech space. As a founding employee at Achievers, Rob spent over 10 years leading marketing and the company's global expansion in 3 different countries until its acquisition in 2015. With his unique experience in HR technology, Rob co-founded WorkTango, a platform that helps managers build authentic relationships and trust with their employees and teams. Rob, welcome to HR Chat.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Rob, you and I have now known each other for a little while. We were first introduced, I think, at the beginning of 2016 in connection with Disrupt HR Vancouver. For the benefit of our listeners today, can we start off by you telling us a little bit more about your career history up to the point of you co-founding WorkTango?
Sure, absolutely. I've really started my career early days, small startup companies, and more on the agency side of things, kind of growing up as a marketer in an IT and in HR. And what I found is working with those agencies and sitting in large client companies for much of that time. I then decided to kind of go back into the startup world after growing one company. There was about 3 of us to about 80 in the agency space. And then I started with a little company called I Love Rewards. That actually was a long 10-year journey that you mentioned in 3 different countries, and really helping achieve. I Love Rewards then became Achievers, many people know in the HR tech space. Really focusing on building that brand, and that was focused on employee recognition and a platform to do those type of things. And at my time there, it was literally a lot of what a growth company does, right? You start with 5 or 6 employees, you wear a lot of hats, and then I kind of ended up leading a lot of the marketing initiatives, a lot of our customer satisfaction and success teams in terms of working with our customers to build the cultures that were right for them. Then, to your point, as mentioned earlier, I ended up in San Francisco for 3 years, London, leading our European expansion, and loved the journey of kind of growing a company. And just last year, after the Achievers acquisition, decided to come back home to Toronto and start up WorkTango.
Okay, thank you very much. International man of mystery, entrepreneur, man to all people, Rob Catalano.
I saw a lot of people the Achievers World Tour.
So tell us a little bit more about WorkTango. What does WorkTango do, Rob?
Sure. So, when we were at Achievers, I spent 10, 11 years talking about how recognition drove employee engagement, and it does. But there's a lot of other factors out there that help companies be great. And what we found was that a lot of employees are disengaged. It's still an epidemic that's happening, costing companies a lot of money from a productivity standpoint and retention standpoint. But even from a performance standpoint, what we're finding is that a lot of companies are looking at changing the way they do performance from annual processes to more real time and more agile. And what we wanted to do is create a company to help both the engagement side of things and on the performance thing. So we call it a new approach to engagement and performance management that helps focus employees and managers in doing the right things. So we have kind of 2 major focuses of what we do. And one is we get a pulse of employee engagement and we take action. So how do we help companies listen to their employees through customizing surveys? How do we learn through intuitive insights and dashboards, and really just engage employees with the right actions and serve that information to leadership and managers so they can act on disengagement and where they should focus their time. The next part of what we do is we focus on agile performance management. Right? How do we help companies set goals more often? How do we enable managers to be great coaches? Again, managers are a big focus on or a big impact on engaged employees. And how do we check in more frequently to improve that alignment and accountability? So we always say we want to build software that employees love, that managers need, and executives crave. And that's basically what our mandate is. And we always say we don't have a mission because missions end. We have a passion. At the end of the day, we're just trying to improve work lives and trying to leverage technology and the new modern workplace to make that happen.
There's a lot of discussion buzzing around on how performance management is changing, even publicly being scrutinized as companies are dropping it more and more. Do you think companies can make the shift away from traditional performance reviews and embrace ideas of agile performance and real-time engagement? And if so, how the devil do they do that, Rob?
Well, I think it's. I think when you first discuss it or talk about it in the HR leadership community, it's initially quite scary, right? It's not something you just turn on and off. It's a culture shift. There's a lot of change management that goes into it. It basically needs something that has to have buy-in from leadership and a focus and a mandate to really change the culture in an organization. I use the Achievers story because it actually is something very similar, right? 10 years ago, the way that companies rewarded and recognized employees was every 5 years, they got a choice of a couple of awards that they would have. Typically, people didn't really want those things. But in a very short period of time, things changed. If you asked someone 10 years ago if they would allow every employee in an organization, a large organization, to allow employees to recognize each other up, down, side to side, bottoms up, as well as reward and give budget to each one of those employees, and on a daily basis they could recognize their employees in a public manner, and and invest budget and time into that, you would think that you were crazy, right? But that's the way it is today, right? Social employee recognition has shifted the way that companies reward and recognize their employees. So I think when people think that it's scary and it's impossible, there are other shifts that happen in terms of the processes and the way we engage and work with our employees. From a performance management standpoint, I think there's just a better way, right? If we look at a lot of companies that right now have developers or engineers that are developing their products and technology, they've moved to a more agile development process, right? They're doing their planning on a weekly basis. They're defining these sprints. They're having more alignment and accountability on what needs to get done and are moving faster. Yet in most organizations, we're still creating goals on an annual basis, right? Not really looking at them again. And our companies work too fast to actually, they work too quickly to set your goals on an annual basis and not look at them all the time. So I think what companies have to do is, one, get a lot of leadership buy-in on what needs to get done and set that standard. They also have to include managers in terms of the conversation that this is the way we're going to work on these things. Here's the benefits that come from it. And then it really becomes a full organizational mission to actually change that culture. So it is possible. There is a better way, and it is getting scrutinized because companies that even invented this back in the day are starting to move on.
So one thing that we keep hearing at the HR Gazette is how companies are trying to align employees with the company's purpose and goals. How are you and how is WorkTango helping make that happen?
So I mentioned managers before, and we are big believers that managers are very key in the alignment of getting employees doing the right things at the right time. Right? If you think of having one end of the spectrum of being the executives in a company, right? They have a strategic narrative. They have goals that the company wants to hit, and they're really trying to drive, the direction of the company. And on the other end of that spectrum, you have employees that are conducting behaviors every single day. Now, the managers become that bridge, right? They become the communication point. They become, that someone who needs to understand where the company's going, but also how employees' behaviors every day impact where the company's going. And I think what a lot of companies do is they don't enable their managers appropriately, right? We take our best individual contributors and we promote them to be our worst managers, right? We don't provide them very, very good training, and we expect them to lead our employees and the company to success. So what I think companies are starting to do, and what we focus on, is how do you get management involved early on? So when you're setting those strategic narratives, when you're having those conversations, when you're having goal setting, you involve your managers. Because when your employees start asking questions about why the company is doing certain things or, why we've made certain decisions, the manager needs to have an answer, and too often they don't. And that's where that breakdown in communication and alignment really happens. And I think just in general, right, if you look at one of the major drivers of engagement, just for most employees, it is that level of sense of purpose and how do what I do every day match, where the company's going and the success that they're looking for. And I think if you start building those conversations more frequent, right, you make those goals more public and get people more accountable to it. You involve managers, as mentioned earlier, then you could start building more of an alignment. And I think that's a big key in terms of this new shift in performance management, right? If you have people talking about it more often, setting goals more often, and making that public, that accountability and alignment goes through the roof.
Do you think that the new onus on ongoing recognition and feedback is driven by the fact that the millennial generation are now so dominant in the workplace, and they're constantly striving for that 24/7 feedback, and they although they want to work more autonomously, they want to constantly know perhaps that they're doing the right things and making a difference?
Yeah, so I think the millennial generation, they want that feedback, they crave it, and it's just something that, they're ambitious and want to get to that next level, next role, and feedback is very important to them. And traditionally, they're okay if it's, if it's not always positive feedback all the time. But I also think it's just the way that millennials grew up, right? Like they'll see something cool, they'll post it on Facebook or Twitter, and moments later, there's 100 people giving them feedback right away. And if you think about even the way that we, train people, even, millennials growing up in sports, like we're sending them in through programs, having them do things, we're giving feedback along the way to help make them better. So I think they're just used to this feedback in more real time. And as an organization can kind of, shift to make recognition and make feedback and these conversations happen on a more real-time basis, they're going to start having a place where these people can thrive, they're enjoying the conversations, and they kind of know what direction they're headed, right? Again, alignment not only on what am I doing to help the company, but alignment is where's my career going, right? Are we having conversations frequently about that?
You talked a bit just now about engagement and how you're helping companies gain better insight and act accordingly. Can you provide an example of how WorkTango helps to take action to impact engagement?
Sure. I think the one thing I always think about when we talk about engagement is I think companies spend too much time measuring and not enough time acting, right? So they'll pay a crazy amount of money to get these massive surveys done once a year. An organization will take some time, a month or so, to get that data back. Then they'll break up the data in HR and talk to leaders and kind of share that measurement. But again, it's a lot of that time and effort doing the measuring, not enough time acting. So from our perspective, if you can do that more frequently and get a pulse of people's engagements on a more frequent basis, you can start dealing with smoke before fire. Right? You can start seeing themes or trends in your organization where you can start having the right conversations, understanding it more, and then acting accordingly. From a WorkTango standpoint, the one thing that we've done with a lot of customers is that once we go through that engagement look and find out different, categories and pillars, or what we call drivers of engagement, then we can start tying into that. So, for example, if a customer is going through that process and finds that career development is really, really low, well then, we'll provide tools to help managers have better ongoing career conversations and make that a priority. I think what's interesting is there's so many studies out there from the world of Harvard and Aon and the list goes on that says, here are all the drivers of engagement, and there may be 6 or 7 that are always consistently there. But for each individual organization, right, they're not the same, right? They're unique. So finding out what those are and then acting on those right things is really what we try and help companies do.
Thank you very much. We're coming towards the end of this particular podcast. I am pretty confident that we're going to invite you back for several more in the future, Rob.
Happy to do
it. Awesome, thank you. Before we do wrap up, just a couple more questions for you. Firstly, are you speaking or attending any HR-related events in the next 6 months? And if so, which events are you attending or speaking at, and why?
So I love the fact that I'm back in Toronto after 5 years from obviously being home, but the HR community and the amount of meetups and events are way more today than they were back then. So there are a lot of things, and top of mind, the things that I can think of that I've committed to is I think December 1st there's going to be the Disrupt HR event. I've been at a couple in other cities, and it's just a great forum to hear 10 to 15 speakers go up for 5 minutes, hear a bunch of different people speak with different types of topics that you might find interesting, and it's just a great evening. And I prefer doing that as opposed to hearing one person speak for an hour, and that's just a great event in Toronto. HRPA is the largest event in Canada when it comes to HR type trade shows, and I've had a soft place in my heart after going there for the last 7 or 8 years. So I'll definitely be attending that. And then we're actually working on creating a couple events. I'm associated with an organization called Culture Lab X, and we're actually working on trying to build these meetup groups and have great speakers talk about how are they building culture or shifting culture in their organization. So some of these I'll be attending, some of them I'll even be speaking at, but the list is pretty long. I'll need to take a look at the calendar and find all of them.
Thank you very much. And most importantly, from Tim Baker, our community director's perspective, you got a little plug in there for Disrupt HR Toronto, which will be awesome, ladies and gentlemen. It's on December 1st here in beautiful Toronto. If you can make it up, you should come. The HR Gazette is a media partner there.
I've never been let down, but it's a great event. I've never been let down.
It really is. So just finally for today, Rob, how can our listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, so feel free to reach out on Twitter at Rob Catalano. You can also, email me at rob@worktango.io, or even check out, the worktango.io or worktango.com website and reach out to me then. And happy to connect with anyone.
Awesome, thank you. So that's it for today. That's HR Chat podcast this time around. Until next time, listeners. I've been your host, Bill Banham, with our wonderful guest, Rob Catalano. Rob, thank you again. And until next time, listeners, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the HR Chat podcast, brought to you by the HR Gazette.